tonight, we drift into a quieter world, a world where ancient forests whisper secrets, and every word is a gentle bridge to peace. Whether it is a lesson of the heart, a hero's journey, or a dream from long ago, you don't need to follow every detail. You don't need to hold on to any thought. Just listen. Let the rhythm of the tale wash over you. And as your body grows heavy, let the magic of these stories carry you away into a deep and effortless sleep. The elf of the rose, in the midst of a garden, grew a rose tree in full blossom, and in the prettiest of all the roses lived an elf. He was such a little wee thing that no human eye could see him. Behind each leaf of the rose, he had a sleeping chamber. He was as well formed and as beautiful as a little child could be, and had wings that reached from his shoulders to his feet. Oh, what sweet fragrance there was in his chambers, and how clean and beautiful were the walls, for they were the blushing leaves of the rose. During the whole day, he enjoyed himself in the warm sunshine, flew from flower to flower, and danced on the wings of the flying butterflies. Then he took it into his head to measure how many steps he would have to go through the roads and crossroads that are on the leaf of a linden tree, what we call the veins on a leaf he took for roads. Aye, and very long roads they were for him. For before he had half finished his task, the sun went down. He had commenced his work too late. It became very cold, the dew fell, and the wind blew. So he thought the best thing he could do would be to return home. He hurried himself as much as he could, but he found the roses all closed up, and he could not get in. Not a single rose stood open. The poor little elf was very much frightened. He had never before been out at night, but had always slumbered secretly behind the warm rose leaves. Oh, this would certainly be his death. At the other end of the garden, he knew there was an arbor overgrown with beautiful honeysuckles. The blossoms looked like large painted horns, and he thought to himself he would go and sleep in one of these till the morning. He flew thither, but hush, two people were in the arbor, a handsome young man and a beautiful lady. They sat side by side and wished that they might never be obliged to part. They loved each other much more than the best child can love its father and mother. But we must part, said the young man. Your brother does not like our engagement, and therefore he sends me so far away on business over mountains and seas. Farewell, my sweet bride, for so you are to me. And then they kissed each other, and the girl wept and gave him a rose. But before she did so, she pressed a kiss upon it so fervently that the flower opened. Then the little elf flew in and leaned his head on the delicate, fragrant walls. Here he could plainly hear them say, "Farewell, farewell." And he felt that the rose had been placed on the young man's breast. Oh, how his heart did beat. The little elf could not go to sleep. It thumped so loudly. The young man took it out as he walked through the dark wood alone, and kissed the flower so often and so violently that the little elf was almost crushed. He could feel through the leaf how hot the lips of the young man were, and the rose had opened as if from the heat of the noonday sun. There came another man who looked gloomy and wicked. He was the wicked brother of the beautiful maiden. He drew out a sharp knife, and while the other was kissing the rose, the wicked man stabbed him to death. Then he cut off his head and buried it with the body in the soft earth under the linden tree. Now he is gone and will soon be forgotten, thought the wicked brother. He will never come back again. He was going on a long journey over mountains and seas. It is easy for a man to lose his life in such a journey. My sister will suppose he is dead, for he cannot come back, and she will not dare to question me about him. Then he scattered the dry leaves over the light earth with his foot and went home through the darkness. But he went not alone, as he thought. The little elf accompanied him. He sat in a dry, rolled-up linden leaf which had fallen from the tree onto the wicked man's head as he was digging the grave. The hat was on the head now, which made it very dark, and the little elf shuddered with fright and indignation at the wicked deed. It was the dawn of morning before the wicked man reached home. He took off his hat and went into his sister's room. There lay the beautiful, blooming girl, dreaming of him whom she loved so, and who was now, she supposed, traveling far away over mountain and sea. Her wicked brother stopped over her and laughed hideously, as fiends only can laugh. The dry leaf fell out of his hair upon the counterpane, but he did not notice it, and went to get a little sleep during the early morning hours. But the elf slipped out of the withered leaf, placed himself by the ear of the sleeping girl, and told her, as in a dream, of the horrid murder. Described the place where her brother had slain her lover and buried his body, and told her of the linden tree in full blossom that stood close by, that you may not think this is only a dream that I have told you, he said. You will find on your bed a withered leaf. Then she awoke and found it there. Oh, what bitter tears she shed, and she could not open her heart to anyone for relief. The window stood open the whole day, and the little elf could easily have reached the roses or any of the flowers, but he could not find it in his heart to leave one so afflicted. In the window stood a bush bearing monthly roses. He seated himself in one of the flowers and gazed on the poor girl. Her brother often came into the room and would be quite cheerful in spite of his base conduct, so she dare not say a word to him of her heart's grief. As soon as night came on, she slipped out of the house and went into the wood to the spot where the linden tree stood. And after removing the leaves from the earth, she turned it up, and there found him, who had been murdered. Oh, how she wept and prayed that she also might die. Gladly would she have taken the body home with her, but that was impossible. So she took up the poor head with the closed eyes, kissed the cold lips, and shook the mold out of the beautiful hair. "I will keep this," said she, and as soon as she had covered the body again with the earth and leaves, she took the head and a little sprig of jasmine that bloomed in the wood near the spot where he was buried, and carried them home with her. As soon as she was in her room, she took the largest flower pot she could find, and in this she placed the head of the dead man, covered it up with earth, and planted the twig of jasmine in it. "Farewell, farewell," whispered the little elf. He could not any longer endure to witness all this agony of grief. He therefore flew away to his own rose in the garden. But the rose was faded. Only a few dry leaves still clung to the green hedge behind it. Alas, how soon all that is good and beautiful passes away, sighed the elf. After a while, he found another rose which became his home, for among its delicate, fragrant leaves he could dwell in safety. Every morning he flew to the window of the poor girl and always found her weeping by the flower pot. The bitter tears fell upon the jasmine twig, and each day, as she became paler and paler, the sprig appeared to grow greener and fresher. One shoot after another sprouted forth, and little white buds blossomed, which the poor girl fondly kissed. But her wicked brother scolded her and asked her if she was going mad. He could not imagine why she was weeping over that flower pot, and it annoyed him. He did not know whose closed eyes were there, nor what red lips were fading beneath the earth. And one day she sat and leaned her head against the flower pot, and the little elf of the rose found her asleep. Then he seated himself by her ear, talked to her of that evening in the arbor, of the sweet perfume of the rose and the loves of the elves. Sweetly she dreamed, and while she dreamt, her life passed away calmly and gently, and her spirit was with him whom she loved in heaven. And the jasmine opened its large white bells and spread forth its sweet fragrance. It had no other way of showing its grief for the dead. But the wicked brother considered the beautiful blooming plant as his own property left to him by his sister, and he placed it in his sleeping room, close by his bed, for it was very lovely in appearance, and the fragrance sweet and delightful. The little elf of the rose followed it, and flew from flower to flower, telling each little spirit that dwelt in them the story of the murdered young man whose head now formed part of the earth beneath them, and of the wicked brother and the poor sister. "We know it," said each little spirit in the flowers. "We know it, for have we not sprung from the eyes and lips of the murdered one? We know it, we know it." And the flowers nodded with their heads in a peculiar manner. The elf of the rose could not understand how they could rest so quietly in the matter. So he flew to the bees who were gathering honey and told them of the wicked brother. And the bees told it to their queen, who commanded that the next morning they should go and kill the murderer. But during the night, the first after the sister's death, while the brother was sleeping in his bed, close to where he had placed the fragrant jasmine, every flower cup opened, and invisibly the little spirits stole out, armed with poisonous spears. They placed themselves by the ear of the sleeper, told him dreadful dreams, and then flew across his lips and pricked his tongue with their poisoned spears. "Now have we revenged the dead," said they, and flew back into the white bells of the jasmine flowers. When the morning came, and as soon as the window was opened, the rose elf with the queen bee and the whole swarm of bees rushed in to kill him. But he was already dead. People were standing round the bed and saying that the scent of the jasmine had killed him. Then the elf of the rose understood the revenge of the flowers and explained it to the queen bee. And she, with the whole swarm, buzzed about the flower pot. The bees could not be driven away. Then a man took it up to remove it, and one of the bees stung him in the hand, so that he let the flower pot fall, and it was broken to pieces. Then everyone saw the whitened skull, and they knew the dead man in the bed was a murderer. And the queen bee hummed in the air and sang of the revenge of the flowers and of the elf of the rose, and said that behind the smallest leaf dwells one who can discover evil deeds and punish them also. The flying trunk. There was once a merchant who was so rich that he could have paved the whole street with gold, and would even then have had enough for a small alley. But he did not do so. He knew the value of money better than to use it in this way. So clever was he that every shilling he put out brought him a crown. And so he continued till he died. His son inherited his wealth, and he lived a merry life with it. He went to a masquerade every night, made kites out of 5-pound notes, and threw pieces of gold into the sea instead of stones, making ducks and drakes of them. In this manner, he soon lost all his money. At last, he had nothing left but a pair of slippers, an old dressing gown, and 4 shillings. And now all his friends deserted him. They could not walk with him in the streets. But one of them, who was very good-natured, sent him an old trunk with this message, "Pack up." "Yes," he said, "it is all very well to say, 'Pack up.'" But he had nothing left to pack up. Therefore he seated himself in the trunk. It was a very wonderful trunk. No sooner did anyone press on the lock than the trunk could fly. He shut the lid and pressed the lock, when away flew the trunk up the chimney, with the merchant's son in it, right up into the clouds. Whenever the bottom of the trunk cracked, he was in a great fright, for if the trunk fell to pieces, he would have made a tremendous somerset over the trees. However, he got safely in his trunk to the land of Turkey. He hid the trunk in the wood under some dry leaves, and then went into the town. He could so this very well, for the Turks always go about dressed in dressing gowns and slippers, as he was himself. He happened to meet a nurse with a little child. "I say, you Turkish nurse," cried he, "what castle is that near the town with the windows placed so high?" "The king's daughter lives there," she replied. "It has been prophesied that she will be very unhappy about a lover, and therefore no one is allowed to visit her unless the king and queen are present." "Thank you," said the merchant's son. So he went back to the wood, seated himself in his trunk, flew up to the roof of the castle, and crept through the window into the princess's room. She lay on the sofa asleep, and she was so beautiful that the merchant's son could not help kissing her. Then she awoke and was very much frightened. But he told her he was a Turkish angel who had come down through the air to see her, which pleased her very much. He sat down by her side and talked to her. He said her eyes were like beautiful dark lakes in which the thoughts swam about like little mermaids, and he told her that her forehead was a snowy mountain which contained splendid halls full of pictures. And then he related to her about the stork who brings the beautiful children from the rivers. These were delightful stories, and when he asked the princess if she would marry him, she consented immediately. "But you must come on Saturday," she said, "for then the king and queen will take tea with me. They will be very proud when they find that I am going to marry a Turkish angel. But you must think of some very pretty stories to tell them, for my parents like to hear stories better than anything. My mother prefers one that is deep and moral, but my father likes something funny to make him laugh." "Very well," he replied, "I shall bring you no other marriage portion than a story." And so they parted. But the princess gave him a sword which was studded with gold coins, and these he could use. Then he flew away to the town and bought a new dressing gown, and afterwards returned to the wood, where he composed a story so as to be ready for Saturday, which was no easy matter. It was ready, however, by Saturday, when he went to see the princess. The king and queen and the whole court were at tea with the princess, and he was received with great politeness. "Will you tell us a story?" said the queen. "One that is instructive and full of deep learning." "Yes, but with something in it to laugh at," said the king. "Certainly," he replied, and commenced at once, asking them to listen attentively. There was once a bundle of matches that were exceedingly proud of their high descent. Their genealogical tree, that is a large pine tree from which they had been cut, was at one time a large old tree in the wood. The matches now lay between a tinder box and an old iron saucepan, and were talking about their youthful days. "Ah, then we grew on the green boughs, and were as green as they. Every morning and evening we were fed with diamond drops of dew. Whenever the sun shone, we felt his warm rays, and the little birds would relate stories to us as they sung. We knew that we were rich, for the other trees only wore their green dress in summer, but our family were able to array themselves in green summer and winter. But the woodcutter came like a great revolution, and our family fell under the axe. The head of the house obtained a situation as mainmast in a very fine ship, and can sail round the world when he will. The other branches of the family were taken to different places, and our office now is to kindle a light for common people. This is how such high-born people as we came to be in a kitchen. Mine has been a very different fate, said the iron pot which stood by the matches. From my first entrance into the world, I have been used to cooking and scouring. I am the first in this house when anything solid or useful is required. My only pleasure is to be made clean and shining after dinner, and to sit in my place and have a little sensible conversation with my neighbors. All of us, excepting the water bucket, which is sometimes taken into the courtyard, live here together within these four walls. We get our news from the market basket, but he sometimes tells us very unpleasant things about the people and the government. Yes, and one day an old pot was so alarmed that he fell down and was broken to pieces. He was a liberal, I can tell you. You are talking too much, said the tinderbox, and the steel struck against the flint till some sparks flew out, crying, "We want a merry evening, don't we?" "Yes, of course," said the matches. "Let us talk about those who are the highest born." "No, I don't like to be always talking of what we are," remarked the saucepan. "Let us think of some other amusement. I will begin. we will tell something that has happened to ourselves. That will be very easy and interesting as well. On the Baltic Sea, near the Danish shore. What a pretty commencement, said the plates. We shall all like that story, I am sure. Yes. Well, in my youth, I lived in a quiet family where the furniture was polished, the floors scoured, and clean curtains put up every fortnight. What an interesting way you have of relating a story, said the carpet broom. It is easy to perceive that you have been a great deal in women's society. There is something so pure runs through what you say. That is quite true, said the water bucket, and he made a spring with joy and splashed some water on the floor. Then the saucepan went on with his story, and the end was as good as the beginning. The plates rattled with pleasure, and the carpet broom brought some green parsley out of the dust hole and crowned the saucepan, for he knew it would vex the others. And he thought, if I crown him today, he will crown me tomorrow. Now let us have a dance, said the fire tongs. And then how they danced and stuck up one leg in the air. The chair cushion in the corner burst with laughter when she saw it. Shall I be crowned now? Asked the fire tongs. So the broom found another wreath for the tongs. They were only common people after all, thought the matches. The tea urn was now asked to sing, but she said she had a cold and could not sing without boiling heat. They all thought this was affectation, and because she did not wish to sing, excepting in the parlor, when on the table with the grand people, in the window sat an old quill pen, with which the maid generally wrote. There was nothing remarkable about the pen, excepting that it had been dipped too deeply in the ink, but it was proud of that. If the tea urn won't sing, said the pen, she can leave it alone. There is a nightingale in a cage who can sing. She has not been taught much, certainly, but we need not say anything this evening about that. I think it highly improper, said the tea kettle, who was kitchen singer and half-brother to the tea urn, that a rich foreign bird should be listened to here. Is it patriotic? Let the market basket decide what is right. I certainly am vexed, said the basket. Inwardly vexed, more than anyone can imagine. Are we spending the evening properly? Would it not be more sensible to put the house in order? If each were in his own place, I would lead a game. This would be quite another thing. Let us act a play, said they all. At the same moment, the door opened, and the maid came in. Then not one stirred. They all remained quite still. Yet at the same time, there was not a single pot amongst them who had not a high opinion of himself and of what he could do if he chose. Yes, if we had chosen. They each thought we might have spent a very pleasant evening. The maid took the matches and lighted them. Dear me, how they sputtered and blazed up. Now then, they thought, everyone will see that we are the first. How we shine, what a light we give. Even while they spoke, their light went out. What a capital story, said the Queen. I feel as if I were really in the kitchen and could see the matches. Yes, you shall marry our daughter. Certainly, said the King. Thou shalt have our daughter. The King said thou to him because he was going to be one of the family. The wedding day was fixed, and on the evening before, the whole city was illuminated. Cakes and sweetmeats were thrown among the people. The street boys stood on tiptoe and shouted, "Hurrah!" and whistled between their fingers. Altogether, it was a very splendid affair. I will give them another treat, said the merchant's son. So he went and bought rockets and crackers and all sorts of fireworks that could be thought of, packed them in his trunk, and flew up with it into the air. What a whizzing and popping they made as they went off. The Turks, when they saw such a sight in the air, jumped so high that their slippers flew about their ears. It was easy to believe after this that the princess was really going to marry a Turkish angel. As soon as the merchant's son had come down in his flying trunk to the wood after the fireworks, he thought, I will go back into the town now and hear what they think of the entertainment. It was very natural that he should wish to know. And what strange things people did say. To be sure, everyone whom he questioned had a different tale to tell, though they all thought it very beautiful. I saw the Turkish angel myself, said one. He had eyes like glittering stars, and a head like foaming water. He flew in a mantle of fire, cried another, and lovely little cherubs peeped out from the folds. And he heard many more fine things about himself, and that the next day he was to be married. After this, he went back to the forest to rest himself in his trunk. It had disappeared. A spark from the fireworks which remained had set it on fire. It was burnt to ashes. So the merchant's son could not fly any more, nor go to meet his bride. She stood all day on the roof, waiting for him, and most likely she is waiting there still, while he wanders through the world telling fairy tales, but none of them so amusing as the one he related about the matches. The storks, on the very edge of a quiet little village where the fields began and the marshes breathed their soft mist in the evenings, stood a small white house with a thatched roof. Upon its chimney, high above the hum of human life, the storks had built their home, a wide nest made of twigs, straw, and forgotten ribbons carried from gardens and barns. There, the mother stork sat proud and serene, with her 4 downy children beneath her wings. Their long necks were still soft and uncertain, their beaks black and clumsy, not yet bright red like their parents. A little distance away, upon the roof ridge, stood the father stork, upright and stately, balancing on one leg. The other he tucked beneath him with such stillness that a passer-by might have thought him carved from dark wood. It must look very grand, he thought to himself. How noble I appear, like a sentry guarding my household. The people below surely believe that I am placed here by command, a true officer of the stork army. They do not know I am a husband keeping watch. Down in the dusty road, children were at play. They saw the storks, and one daring boy began to chant a teasing rhyme, his voice quick and mischievous. Soon, all joined in shouting the verses as children do, half in song, half in laughter. Stork, stork, flay away. Stand not on one leg, I pray. See, your wife is in her nest with her little ones at rest. They will hang one and fry another. They will shoot a third and roast his brother. Listen to them, cried the young storks. Frightened, they say we shall be hanged and roasted. Do not mind what they sing, said the mother gently. They are only children, and words cannot harm wings. But the boys kept pointing and mocking, their laughter echoing up to the roof. Only one child did not join in, a quiet boy named Peter. It is cruel to make fun of the birds, he said, and turned away. The mother stork comforted her children. Look at your father, she said. How calm he stands, though the wind blows. That is true dignity. Yet the little ones trembled and drew their heads deep into the nest, whispering that perhaps the song was true. Next day, when the sun rose again, the children returned and sang louder than before. They will hang one and roast another. Will they really hang and roast us? Cried the little storks. Certainly not, said the mother. Soon I shall teach you to fly. Then we shall go to the meadows, and you shall see the frogs bow to us in the water, croaking, croak, croak, as if begging for mercy. And then we shall eat them. That will be your first feast. And after that, asked the eager young ones. After that, said the mother, all the storks in the country gather for the great autumn drill. The general inspects us all, and whoever cannot fly well is thrust through with his beak and sent tumbling into the reeds. So you must learn quickly. Oh, gasped the children. Then it is true, they may kill us, not like the boys say, answered the mother. And when we have passed the general's review, we shall travel far away to Egypt, where the sun is kind and the air never freezes. There you will see mountains like giants and stone houses shaped like triangles, that pierce the sky. They are called pyramids and are older than the oldest stork can remember. There runs a mighty river that swells and overflows its banks, leaving soft mud behind full of delicious frogs. The young storks stretched their necks in wonder. Oh, how beautiful it must be there. Yes, said the mother dreamily. While we stroll in the sunshine, eating and resting, the trees here will stand bare, and the water will turn to white dust that falls from the sky. Will the naughty boys turn to white dust too? Asked one of the little ones. No, said the mother, but they will shiver and sit in dark rooms while we dance beneath the warm heavens. As the weeks passed, the young storks grew tall and sleek. Their feathers gleamed in the sunlight, and their father brought them frogs, snakes, and tender lizards to feast upon. He entertained them with stories of long journeys over seas and deserts, and when he clattered his beak, it sounded like laughter. At last came the day of lessons. Now, my children, said the mother, it is time to learn what wings are for, how they wobbled on the roof tiles. The wind tugged at their feathers, and the ground looked terribly far below. Hold your heads high, your wings firm, said the mother. Once, twice, like this, she spread her great wings and glided a little way. The young ones tried to follow, but down they tumbled into the thatch, flapping wildly. I do not wish to fly, whined one. I am comfortable here. Would you rather stay till winter comes and the boys come to hang you? Said the mother sharply. No, no, cried all four, and they tried again. By the third day, they could lift themselves into the air, though awkwardly. They fluttered around the chimney, proud as kings. The boys below came singing again. Stork, stork, fly away. Shall we swoop down and peck out their eyes? Asked the young storks. No, said the mother. Your time will come. Think now only of flying 1, 2, 3. Turn excellent. Tomorrow we go to the marshes. There will be many fine storks, and I expect you to behave with grace for good manners. Make even feathers shine. Still the young ones whispered among themselves, we shall have our revenge one day. Of all the children, the smallest boy who began the mocking song was the most persistent. He sang louder than anyone every single day. The young storks hated him most of all. They imagined him a giant, though he was only 6 years old. We will remember him, they muttered. Now, cried the young storks, now let us take our revenge. Little Ida's flowers, my poor flowers, are quite dead, said little Ida. They were so pretty yesterday evening, and now all the leaves are hanging down, quite withered. What do they do that for? she asked of the student who sat on the sofa. She liked him very much. He could tell the most amusing stories and cut out the prettiest pictures. Hearts and ladies, dancing castles with doors that opened as well as flowers. He was a delightful student. "Why do the flowers look so faded today?" she asked again, and pointed to her nosegay, which was quite withered. "Don't you know what is the matter with them?" said the student. "The flowers were at a ball last night, and therefore it is no wonder they hang their heads." "But flowers cannot dance," cried little Ida. "Yes, indeed they can," replied the student. "When it grows dark and everybody is asleep, they jump about quite merrily. They have a ball almost every night." "Can children go to these balls?" "Yes," said the student. "Little daisies and lilies of the valley." "Where do the beautiful flowers dance?" asked little Ida. "Have you not often seen the large castle outside the gates of the town, where the king lives in summer, and where the beautiful garden is full of flowers? And have you not fed the swans with bread when they swam towards you? Well, the flowers have capital balls there, believe me. I was in the garden out there yesterday with my mother," said Ida, "but all the leaves were off the trees, and there was not a single flower left. Where are they? I used to see so many in the summer." "They are in the castle," replied the student. "You must know that as soon as the king and all the court are gone into the town, the flowers run out of the garden into the castle, and you should see how merry they are. The two most beautiful roses seat themselves on the throne and are called the king and queen. Then all the red coxcombs range themselves on each side and bow. These are the lords in waiting. After that, the pretty flowers come in, and there is a grand ball. The blue violets represent little naval cadets and dance with hyacinths and crocuses, which they call young ladies. The tulips and tiger lilies are the old ladies who sit and watch the dancing so that everything may be conducted with order and propriety." "But," said little Ida, "is there no one there to hurt the flowers for dancing in the king's castle?" "No one knows anything about it," said the student. "The old steward of the castle, who has to watch there at night, sometimes comes in. But he carries a great bunch of keys, and as soon as the flowers hear the keys rattle, they run and hide themselves behind the long curtains and stand quite still, just peeping their heads out. Then the old steward says, 'I smell flowers here,' but he cannot see them." "Oh, how capital!" said little Ida, clapping her hands. "Should I be able to see these flowers?" "Yes," said the student. "Mind you think of it the next time you go out. No doubt you will see them if you peep through the window. I did so today, and I saw a long yellow lily lying stretched out on the sofa. She was a court lady. Can the flowers from the botanical gardens go to these balls?" asked Ida. "It is such a distance." "Oh yes," said the student, "whenever they like, for they can fly. Have you not seen those beautiful red, white, and yellow butterflies that look like flowers? They were flowers once. They have flown off their stalks into the air and flap their leaves as if they were little wings to make them fly. Then, if they behave well, they obtain permission to fly about during the day, instead of being obliged to sit still on their stems at home. And so, in time, their leaves become real wings. It may be, however, that the flowers in the botanical gardens have never been to the king's palace, and therefore they know nothing of the merry doings at night which take place there. I will tell you what to do, and the botanical professor, who lives close by here, will be so surprised. You know him very well, do you not? Well, next time you go into his garden, you must tell one of the flowers that there is going to be a grand ball at the castle. Then that flower will tell all the others, and they will fly away to the castle as soon as possible. And when the professor walks into his garden, there will not be a single flower left. How he will wonder what has become of them. But how can one flower tell another? Flowers cannot speak. No, certainly not, replied the student. But they can make signs. Have you not often seen that when the wind blows, they nod at one another and rustle all their green leaves? Can the professor understand the signs? Asked Ida. Yes, to be sure he can. He went one morning into his garden and saw a stinging nettle making signs with its leaves to a beautiful red carnation. It was saying, "You are so pretty. I like you very much." But the professor did not approve of such nonsense, so he clapped his hands on the nettle to stop it. Then the leaves, which are its fingers, stung him so sharply that he has never ventured to touch a nettle since. "Oh, how funny," said Ida, and she laughed. "How can anyone put such notions into a child's head?" said a tiresome lawyer who had come to pay a visit and sat on the sofa. He did not like the student and would grumble when he saw him cutting out droll or amusing pictures. Sometimes it would be a man hanging on a gibbet and holding a heart in his hand, as if he had been stealing hearts. Sometimes it was an old witch riding through the air on a broom and carrying her husband on her nose. But the lawyer did not like such jokes, and he would say, as he had just said, "How can anyone put such nonsense into a child's head? What absurd fancies there are." But to little Ida, all these stories, which the student told her about the flowers, seemed very droll, and she thought over them a great deal. The flowers did hang their heads because they had been dancing all night and were very tired, and most likely they were ill. Then she took them into the room where a number of toys lay on a pretty little table, and the whole of the table drawer besides was full of beautiful things. Her doll, Sophie, lay in the doll's bed asleep, and little Ida said to her, "You must really get up, Sophie, and be content to lie in the drawer tonight. The poor flowers are ill, and they must lie in your bed. Then, perhaps, they will get well again." So she took the doll out, who looked quite cross, and said not a single word, for she was angry at being turned out of her bed. Ida placed the flowers in the doll's bed and drew the quilt over them. Then she told them to lie quite still and be good while she made some tea for them, so that they might be quite well and able to get up the next morning. And she drew the curtains close round the little bed so that the sun might not shine in their eyes. During the whole evening, she could not help thinking of what the student had told her, and before she went to bed herself, she was obliged to peep behind the curtains into the garden, where all her mother's beautiful flowers grew, hyacinths and tulips and many others. Then she whispered to them quite softly, "I know you are going to a ball tonight." But the flowers appeared as if they did not understand, and not a leaf moved. Still, Ida felt quite sure she knew all about it. She lay awake a long time after she was in bed, thinking how pretty it must be to see all the beautiful flowers dancing in the king's garden. "I wonder if my flowers have really been there," she said to herself, and then she fell asleep. In the night, she awoke. She had been dreaming of the flowers and of the student, as well as of the tiresome lawyer who found fault with him. It was quite still in Ida's bedroom. The night lamp burnt on the table, and her father and mother were asleep. "I wonder if my flowers are still lying in Sophie's bed," she thought to herself. "How much I should like to know." She raised herself a little and glanced at the door of the room, where all her flowers and playthings lay. It was partly open, and as she listened, it seemed as if someone in the room was playing the piano, but softly and more prettily than she had ever before heard it. "Now, all the flowers are certainly dancing in there," she thought, Oh, how much I should like to see them. But she did not dare move for fear of disturbing her father and mother. If they would only come in here, she thought. But they did not come, and the music continued to play so beautifully and was so pretty that she could resist no longer. She crept out of her little bed, went softly to the door, and looked into the room. Oh, what a splendid sight there was, to be sure. There was no night lamp burning, but the room appeared quite light, for the moon shone through the window upon the floor and made it almost like day. All the hyacinths and tulips stood in 2 long rows down the room. Not a single flower remained in the window, and the flower pots were all empty. The flowers were dancing gracefully on the floor, making turns, and holding each other by their long green leaves as they swung round. At the piano sat a large yellow lily, which little Ida was sure she had seen in the summer, for she remembered the student saying she was very much like Miss Lena, one of Ida's friends. They all laughed at him. Then, but now it seemed to little Ida as if the tall yellow flower was really like the young lady. She had just the same manners while playing, bending her long yellow face from side to side and nodding in time to the beautiful music. Then she saw a large purple crocus jump into the middle of the table where the playthings stood, go up to the doll's bedstead, and draw back the curtains. There lay the sick flowers, but they got up directly and nodded to the others as a sign that they wished to dance with them. The old rough doll with the broken mouth stood up and bowed to the pretty flowers. They did not look ill at all now, but jumped about and were very merry, yet none of them noticed little Ida. Presently, it seemed as if something fell from the table. Ida looked that way and saw a slight carnival rod jumping down among the flowers, as if it belonged to them. It was, however, very smooth and neat, and a little wax doll with a broad-brimmed hat on her head, like the one worn by the lawyer, sat upon it. The carnival rod hopped about among the flowers on its 3 red, stilted feet, and stamped quite loud when it danced the mazurka. The flowers could not perform this dance. They were too light to stamp in that manner. All at once, the wax doll, which rode on the carnival rod, seemed to grow larger and taller, and it turned round and said to the paper flowers, "How can you put such things in a child's head? They are all foolish fancies." And then the doll was exactly like the lawyer with the broad-brimmed hat, and looked as yellow and as cross as he did. But the paper dolls struck him on his thin legs and he shrunk up again and became quite a little wax doll. This was very amusing, and Ida could not help laughing. The carnival rod went on dancing, and the lawyer was obliged to dance also. It was no use he might make himself great and tall, or remain a little wax doll with a large black hat. Still, he must dance. Then at last, the other flowers interceded for him, especially those who had lain in the doll's bed, and the carnival rod gave up his dancing. At the same moment, a loud knocking was heard in the drawer, where Ida's doll, Sophie, lay with many other toys. Then the rough doll ran to the end of the table, laid himself flat down upon it, and began to pull the drawer out a little way. Then Sophie raised himself and looked round, quite astonished. "There must be a ball here tonight," said Sophie. "Why did not somebody tell me?" "Will you dance with me?" said the rough doll. "You are the right sort to dance with, certainly," said she, turning her back upon him. Then she seated herself on the edge of the drawer and thought that perhaps one of the flowers would ask her to dance. But none of them came. Then she coughed, "Hem, hem, ahem." But for all that, not one came. The shabby doll now danced quite alone, and not very badly after all. As none of the flowers seemed to notice Sophie, she let herself down from the drawer to the floor, so as to make a very great noise. All the flowers came round her directly and asked if she had hurt herself, especially those who had lain in her bed. But she was not hurt at all, and Ida's flowers thanked her for the use of the nice bed and were very kind to her. They led her into the middle of the room, where the moon shone and danced with her, while all the other flowers formed a circle round them. Then Sophie was very happy and said they might keep her bed. She did not mind lying in the drawer at all. But the flowers thanked her very much and said, "We cannot live long. Tomorrow morning we shall be quite dead. And you must tell little Ida to bury us in the garden near to the grave of the canary. Then in the summer we shall wake up and be more beautiful than ever. No, you must not die," said Sophie, as she kissed the flowers. Then the door of the room opened, and a number of beautiful flowers danced in. Ida could not imagine where they could come from, unless they were the flowers from the king's garden. First came 2 lovely roses with little golden crowns on their heads. These were the king and queen. Beautiful stocks and carnations followed, bowing to everyone present. They had also music with them. Large poppies and peonies had pea shells for instruments, and blew into them till they were quite red in the face. The bunches of blue hyacinths and the little white snowdrops jingled their bell-like flowers as if they were real bells. Then came many more flowers: blue violets, purple heart's ease daisies, and lilies of the valley, and they all danced together and kissed each other. It was very beautiful to behold. At last the flowers wished each other good night. Then little Ida crept back into her bed again and dreamt of all she had seen. When she arose the next morning, she went quickly to the little table to see if the flowers were still there. She drew aside the curtains of the little bed. There they all lay, but quite faded, much more so than the day before. Sophie was lying in the drawer where Ida had placed her, but she looked very sleepy. "Do you remember what the flowers told you to say to me?" said little Ida. But Sophie looked quite stupid and said not a single word. "You are not kind at all," said Ida, "and yet they all danced with you." Then she took a little paper box on which were painted beautiful birds and laid the dead flowers in it. "This shall be your pretty coffin," she said, "and by, when my cousins come to visit me, they shall help me to bury you out in the garden, so that next summer you may grow up again, more beautiful than ever." Her cousins were two good-tempered boys whose names were James and Adolphus. Their father had given them each a bow and arrow, and they had brought them to show Ida. She told them about the poor flowers, which were dead, and as soon as they obtained permission, they went with her to bury them. The two boys walked first with their crossbows on their shoulders, and little Ida followed, carrying the pretty box containing the dead flowers. They dug a little grave in the garden. Ida kissed her flowers and then laid them with the box in the earth. James and Adolphus then fired their crossbows over the grave, as they had neither guns nor cannons. Thumbelina, there was once a woman who wished very much to have a little child, but she could not obtain her wish. At last she went to a fairy and said, "I should so very much like to have a little child. Can you tell me where I can find one?" "Oh, that can be easily managed," said the fairy. "Here is a barleycorn of a different kind to those which grow in the farmer's fields and which the chickens eat. Put it into a flower pot and see what will happen." "Thank you," said the woman, and she gave the fairy 12 shillings, which was the price of the barleycorn. Then she went home and planted it, and immediately there grew up a large, handsome flower, something like a tulip in appearance, but with its leaves tightly closed, as if it were still a bud. "It is a beautiful flower," said the woman, and she kissed the red and golden-colored leaves, and while she did so, the flower opened, and she could see that it was a real tulip. Within the flower, upon the green velvet stamens, sat a very delicate and graceful little maiden. She was scarcely half as long as a thumb, and they gave her the name of Thumbelina, or Tiny, because she was so small. A walnut shell, elegantly polished, served her for a cradle. Her bed was formed of blue violet leaves, with a rose leaf for a counterpane. Here she slept at night, but during the day she amused herself on a table where the woman had placed a plateful of water. Round this plate were wreaths of flowers, with their stems in the water, and upon it floated a large tulip leaf, which served Tiny for a boat. Here the little maiden sat and rowed herself from side to side with 2 oars made of white horsehair. It really was a very pretty sight. Tiny could also sing so softly and sweetly that nothing like her singing had ever before been heard. One night, while she lay in her pretty bed, a large, ugly, wet toad crept through a broken pane of glass in the window and leaped right upon the table where Tiny lay sleeping under her rose-leaf quilt. What a pretty little wife this would make for my son, said the toad, and she took up the walnut shell in which little Tiny lay asleep and jumped through the window with it into the garden. In the swampy margin of a broad stream in the garden lived the toad with her son. He was uglier even than his mother, and when he saw the pretty little maiden in her elegant bed, he could only cry, "Croak, croak, croak." "Don't speak so loud, or she will wake," said the toad, "and then she might run away, for she is as light as swans. Down, we will place her on one of the water lily leaves out in the stream. It will be like an island to her. She is so light and small, and then she cannot escape. And while she is away, we will make haste and prepare the stateroom under the marsh in which you are to live when you are married." Far out in the stream grew a number of water lilies with broad green leaves, which seemed to float on the top of the water. The largest of these leaves appeared farther off than the rest, and the old toad swam out to it with the walnut shell in which little Tiny lay still asleep. The tiny little creature woke very early in the morning and began to cry bitterly when she found where she was, for she could see nothing but water on every side of the large green leaf, and no way of reaching the land. Meanwhile, the old toad was very busy under the marsh, decking her room with rushes and wild yellow flowers to make it look pretty for her new daughter-in-law. Then she swam out with her ugly son to the leaf on which she had placed poor little Tiny. She wanted to fetch the pretty bed that she might put it in the bridal chamber to be ready for her. The old toad bowed low to her in the water and said, "Here is my son. He will be your husband, and you will live happily in the marsh by the stream." Croak, croak, croak was all her son could say for himself. So the toad took up the elegant little bed and swam away with it, leaving Tiny all alone on the green leaf where she sat and wept. She could not bear to think of living with the old toad and having her ugly son for a husband. The little fishes who swam about in the water beneath had seen the toad and heard what she said. So they lifted their heads above the water to look at the little maiden. As soon as they caught sight of her, they saw she was very pretty, and it made them very sorry to think that she must go and live with the ugly toads. No, it must never be. So they assembled together in the water round the green stalk, which held the leaf on which the little maiden stood, and gnawed it away at the root with their teeth. Then the leaf floated down the stream, carrying Tiny far away out of reach of land. Tiny sailed past many towns, and the little birds in the bushes saw her and sang, "What a lovely little creature." So the leaf swam away with her farther and farther till it brought her to other lands. A graceful little white butterfly constantly fluttered round her, and at last alighted on the leaf. Tiny pleased him, and she was glad of it, for now the toad could not possibly reach her, and the country through which she sailed was beautiful, and the sun shone upon the water till it glittered like liquid gold. She took off her girdle and tied one end of it round the butterfly, and the other end of the ribbon she fastened to the leaf, which now glided on much faster than ever, taking little Tiny with it as she stood. Presently, a large cockchafer flew by. The moment he caught sight of her, he seized her round her delicate waist with his claws and flew with her into a tree. The green leaf floated away on the brook, and the butterfly flew with it, for he was fastened to it and could not get away. Oh, how frightened little Tiny felt when the cockchafer flew with her to the tree, but especially was she sorry for the beautiful white butterfly which she had fastened to the leaf, for if he could not free himself, he would die of hunger. But the cockchafer did not trouble himself at all about the matter. He seated himself by her side on a large green leaf, gave her some honey from the flowers to eat, and told her she was very pretty, though not in the least like a cockchafer. After a time, all the cockchafers turned up their feelers and said, She has only 2 legs. How ugly that looks." "She has no feelers," said another. "Her waist is quite slim. Pooh, she is like a human being." "Oh, she is ugly," said all the lady cockchafers, although Tiny was very pretty. Then the cockchafer who had run away with her believed all the others when they said she was ugly, and would have nothing more to say to her, and told her she might go where she liked. Then he flew down with her from the tree and placed her on a daisy, and she wept at the thought that she was so ugly that even the cockchafers would have nothing to say to her. And all the while, she was really the loveliest creature that one could imagine, and as tender and delicate as a beautiful rose leaf. During the whole summer, poor little Tiny lived quite alone in the wide forest. She wove herself a bed with blades of grass and hung it up under a broad leaf to protect herself from the rain. She sucked the honey from the flowers for food and drank the dew from their leaves every morning. So passed away the summer and the autumn, and then came the winter, the long, cold winter. All the birds who had sung to her so sweetly were flown away, and the trees and the flowers had withered. The large clover leaf, under the shelter of which she had lived, was now rolled together and shriveled up. Nothing remained but a yellow, withered stalk. She felt dreadfully cold, for her clothes were torn, and she was herself so frail and delicate that poor little Tiny was nearly frozen to death. It began to snow, too, and the snowflakes, as they fell upon her, were like a whole shovelful falling upon one of us, for we are tall, but she was only an inch high. Then she wrapped herself up in a dry leaf, but it cracked in the middle and could not keep her warm, and she shivered with cold. Near the wood in which she had been living lay a cornfield, but the corn had been cut a long time. Nothing remained but the bare, dry stubble standing up out of the frozen ground. It was to her like struggling through a large wood. Oh, how she shivered with the cold. She came at last to the door of a field mouse who had a little den under the corn stubble. There dwelt the field mouse in warmth and comfort, with a whole roomful of corn, a kitchen, and a beautiful dining room. Poor little Tiny stood before the door, just like a little beggar girl, and begged for a small piece of barley corn, for she had been without a morsel to eat for 2 days. "You poor little creature," said the field mouse, who was really a good old field mouse, "come into my warm room and dine with me." She was very pleased with Tiny, so she said, "You are quite welcome to stay with me all the winter if you like, but you must keep my rooms clean and neat, and tell me stories, for I shall like to hear them very much." and Tiny did all the field mouse asked her, and found herself very comfortable. "We shall have a visitor soon," said the field mouse one day. "My neighbor pays me a visit once a week. He is better off than I am. He has large rooms and wears a beautiful black velvet coat. If you could only have him for a husband, you would be well provided for indeed. But he is blind, so you must tell him some of your prettiest stories." But Tiny did not feel at all interested about this neighbor, for he was a mole. However, he came and paid his visit, dressed in his black velvet coat. "He is very rich and learned, and his house is 20 times larger than mine," said the field mouse. He was rich and learned, no doubt, but he always spoke slightingly of the sun and the pretty flowers, because he had never seen them. Tiny was obliged to sing to him, "Ladybird, ladybird, fly away home," and many other pretty songs, and the mole fell in love with her, because she had such a sweet voice. But he said nothing yet, for he was very cautious. A short time before the mole had dug a long passage under the earth, which led from the dwelling of the field mouse to his own, and here she had permission to walk with Tiny whenever she liked. But he warned them not to be alarmed at the sight of a dead bird which lay in the passage. It was a perfect bird, with a beak and feathers, and could not have been dead long, and was lying just where the mole had made his passage. The mole took a piece of phosphorescent wood in his mouth, and it glittered like fire in the dark. Then he went before them to light them through the long, dark passage. When they came to the spot where lay the dead bird, the mole pushed his broad nose through the ceiling. The earth gave way, so that there was a large hole, and the daylight shone into the passage. In the middle of the floor lay a dead swallow, his beautiful wings pulled close to his sides, his feet and his head drawn up under his feathers. The poor bird had evidently died of the cold. It made little Tiny very sad to see it. She did so love the little birds. All the summer they had sung and twittered for her so beautifully. But the mole pushed it aside with his crooked legs and said, "He will sing no more now. How miserable it must be to be born a little bird. I am thankful that none of my children will ever be birds, for they can do nothing but cry, tweet, tweet, and always die of hunger in the winter." Yes, you may well say that as a clever man, and exclaimed the field mouse, "What is the use of his twittering, for when winter comes, he must either starve or be frozen to death. Still, birds are very high bred." Tiny said nothing, but when the two others had turned their backs on the bird, she stooped down and stroked aside the soft feathers which covered the head and kissed the closed eyelids. Perhaps this was the one who sang to me so sweetly in the summer, she said, and how much pleasure it gave me, you dear, pretty bird. The mole now stopped up the hole through which the daylight shone, and then accompanied the lady home. But during the night, Tiny could not sleep, so she got out of bed and wove a large, beautiful carpet of hay. Then she carried it to the dead bird and spread it over him, with some down from the flowers which she had found in the field mouse's room. It was as soft as wool, and she spread some of it on each side of the bird, so that he might lie warmly in the cold earth. "Farewell, you pretty little bird," said she. "Farewell. Thank you for your delightful singing during the summer, when all the trees were green and the warm sun shone upon us." Then she laid her head on the bird's breast, but she was alarmed immediately, for it seemed as if something inside the bird went thump, thump. It was the bird's heart. He was not really dead, only benumbed with the cold, and the warmth had restored him to life. In autumn, all the swallows fly away into warm countries, but if one happens to linger, the cold seizes it. It becomes frozen and falls down as if dead. It remains where it fell, and the cold snow covers it. Tiny trembled very much. She was quite frightened, for the bird was large, a great deal larger than herself. She was only an inch high, but she took courage, laid the wool more thickly over the poor swallow, and then took a leaf which she had used for her own counterpane, and laid it over the head of the poor bird. The next morning, she again stole out to see him. He was alive, but very weak. He could only open his eyes for a moment to look at Tiny, who stood by holding a piece of decayed wood in her hand, for she had no other lantern. "Thank you, pretty little maiden," said the sick swallow. "I have been so nicely warmed that I shall soon regain my strength and be able to fly about again in the warm sunshine." "Oh," said she, "it is cold out of doors now. It snows and freezes. Stay in your warm bed. I will take care of you." Caw. Then she brought the swallow some water in a flower leaf, and after he had drank, he told her that he had wounded one of his wings in a thorn bush and could not fly as fast as the others, who were soon far away on their journey to warm countries. Then, at last, he had fallen to the earth and could remember no more, nor how he came to be where she had found him. The whole winter, the swallow remained underground, and Tiny nursed him with care and love. Neither the mole nor the field mouse knew anything about it, for they did not like swallows. Very soon, the springtime came, and the sun warmed the earth. Then the swallow bade farewell to Tiny, and she opened the hole in the ceiling, which the mole had made. The sun shone in upon them so beautifully that the swallow asked her if she would go with him. She could sit on his back, he said, and he would fly away with her into the green woods. But Tiny knew it would make the field mouse very grieved if she left her in that manner. So she said, "No, I cannot." "Farewell then, farewell, you good, pretty little maiden," said the swallow. And he flew out into the sunshine. Tiny looked after him, and the tears rose in her eyes. She was very fond of the poor swallow. "Tweet, tweet," sang the bird as he flew out into the green woods, and Tiny felt very sad. She was not allowed to go out into the warm sunshine. The corn which had been sown in the field over the house of the field mouse had grown up high into the air and formed a thick wood to Tiny, who was only an inch in height. "You are going to be married, Tiny," said the field mouse. "My neighbor has asked for you. What good fortune for a poor child like you. Now we will prepare your wedding clothes. They must be both woolen and linen. Nothing must be wanting when you are the mole's wife." Tiny had to turn the spindle, and the field mouse hired 4 spiders who were to weave day and night. Every evening, the mole visited her and was continually speaking of the time when the summer would be over. Then he would keep his wedding day with Tiny. But now, the heat of the sun was so great that it burned the earth and made it quite hard like a stone. As soon as the summer was over, the wedding should take place, but Tiny was not at all pleased, for she did not like the tiresome mole. Every morning when the sun rose, and every evening when it went down, she would creep out at the door, and as the wind blew aside the ears of corn so that she could see the blue sky, she thought how beautiful and bright it seemed out there, and wished so much to see her dear swallow again. But he never returned, for by this time he had flown far away into the lovely green forest. When autumn arrived, Tiny had her outfit quite ready, and the field mouse said to her, "In 4 weeks the wedding must take place." Then Tiny wept and said she would not marry the disagreeable mole. "Nonsense," replied the field mouse. "Now don't be obstinate, or I shall bite you with my white teeth. He is a very handsome mole. The queen herself does not wear more beautiful velvets and furs. His kitchen and cellars are quite full. You ought to be very thankful for such good fortune." Well, So the wedding day was fixed, on which the mole was to fetch Tiny away, to live with him deep under the earth, and never again to see the warm sun, because he did not like it. The poor child was very unhappy at the thought of saying farewell to the beautiful sun, and as the field mouse had given her permission to stand at the door, she went to look at it once more. "Farewell, bright sun," she cried, stretching out her arm towards it. And then she walked a short distance from the house, for the corn had been cut, and only the dry stubble remained in the fields. "Farewell, farewell," she repeated, twining her arm round a little red flower that grew just by her side. "Greet the little swallow from me, if you should see him again." "Tweet, tweet," sounded over her head suddenly. She looked up, and there was the swallow himself flying close by. As soon as he spied Tiny, he was delighted. And then she told him how unwilling she felt to marry the ugly mole, and to live always beneath the earth, and never to see the bright sun any more. And as she told him, she wept. "Cold winter is coming," said the swallow, "and I am going to fly away into warmer countries. Will you go with me? You can sit on my back and fasten yourself on with your sash. Then we can fly away from the ugly mole and his gloomy rooms, far away over the mountains, into warmer countries where the sun shines more brightly than here, where it is always summer and the flowers bloom in greater beauty. Fly now with me, dear little Tiny. You saved my life when I lay frozen in that dark passage." "Yes, I will go with you," said Tiny. And she seated herself on the bird's back, with her feet on his outstretched wings, and tied her girdle to one of his strongest feathers. Then the swallow rose in the air and flew over forest and over sea, high above the highest mountains, covered with eternal snow. Tiny would have been frozen in the cold air, but she crept under the bird's warm feathers, keeping her little head uncovered, so that she might admire the beautiful lands over which they passed. At length, they reached the warm countries where the sun shines brightly, and the sky seems so much higher above the earth. Here on the hedges and by the wayside grew purple, green, and white grapes. Lemons and oranges hung from trees in the woods, and the air was fragrant with myrtles and orange blossoms. Beautiful children ran along the country lanes, playing with large, gay butterflies. And as the swallow flew farther and farther, every place appeared still more lovely. At last, they came to a blue lake, and by the side of it, shaded by trees of the deepest green, stood a palace of dazzling white marble, built in the olden times. Vines clustered round its lofty pillars, and at the top were many swallows' nests and one of these was the home of the swallow who carried Tiny. "This is my house," said the swallow. "But it would not do for you to live there. You would not be comfortable. You must choose for yourself one of those lovely flowers, and I will put you down upon it, and then you shall have everything that you can wish to make you happy." "That will be delightful," she said, and clapped her little hands for joy. A large marble pillar lay on the ground, which in falling had been broken into 3 pieces. Between these pieces grew the most beautiful, large white flowers. So the swallow flew down with Tiny and placed her on one of the broad leaves. But how surprised she was to see in the middle of the flower a tiny little man, as white and transparent as if he had been made of crystal. He had a gold crown on his head and delicate wings at his shoulders, and was not much larger than Tiny herself. He was the angel of the flower, for a tiny man and a tiny woman dwell in every flower, and this was the king of them all. "Oh, how beautiful he is," whispered Tiny to the swallow. The little prince was at first quite frightened at the bird, who was like a giant compared to such a delicate little creature as himself. But when he saw Tiny, he was delighted, and thought her the prettiest little maiden he had ever seen. He took the gold crown from his head and placed it on hers, and asked her name, and if she would be his wife and queen over all the flowers. This certainly was a very different sort of husband to the son of a toad, or the mole with my black velvet and fur. So she said yes to the handsome prince. Then all the flowers opened, and out of each came a little lady or a tiny lord, all so pretty. It was quite a pleasure to look at them. Each of them brought Tiny a present. But the best gift was a pair of beautiful wings, which had belonged to a large white fly, and they fastened them to Tiny's shoulders so that she might fly from flower to flower. Then there was much rejoicing, and the little swallow who sat above them in his nest was asked to sing a wedding song, which he did as well as he could. But in his heart he felt sad, for he was very fond of Tiny, and would have liked never to part from her again. "You must not be called Tiny any more," said the spirit of the flowers to her. "It is an ugly name, and you are so very pretty. We will call you Maya. Farewell, farewell," said the swallow with a heavy heart as he left the warm countries to fly back into Denmark. There he had a nest over the window of a house in which dwelt the writer of fairy tales. The swallow sang tweet, tweet, and from his song came the whole story. The goloshes of fortune, a beginning. In a house in Copenhagen, not far from the king's new market, a very large party had assembled the host and his family, expecting no doubt to receive invitations in return. One half of the company were already seated at the card tables. The other half seemed to be waiting the result of their hostess's question. Well, how shall we amuse ourselves? Conversation followed, which, after a while, began to prove very entertaining. Among other subjects, it turned upon the events of the Middle Ages, which some persons maintained were more full of interest than our own times. Councillor Knapp defended this opinion so warmly that the lady of the house immediately went over to his side, and both exclaimed against Ørsted's essays on ancient and modern times, in which the preference is given to our own. The councillor considered the times of the Danish king Hans as the noblest and happiest. The conversation on this topic was only interrupted for a moment by the arrival of a newspaper, which did not, however, contain much worth reading. And while it is still going on, we will pay a visit to the anteroom, in which cloaks, sticks, and goloshes were carefully placed. Here sat two maidens, one young and the other old, as if they had come and were waiting to accompany their mistresses home. But on looking at them more closely, it could easily be seen that they were no common servants. Their shapes were too graceful, their complexions too delicate, and the cut of their dresses much too elegant. They were two fairies. The younger was not Fortune herself, but the chambermaid of one of Fortune's attendants, who carries about her more trifling gifts. The elder one, who was named Care, looked rather gloomy. She always goes about to perform her own business in person, for then she knows it is properly done. They were telling each other where they had been during the day. The messenger of Fortune had only transacted a few unimportant matters. For instance, she had preserved a new bonnet from a shower of rain, and obtained for an honest man a bow from a titled nobody, and so on. But she had something extraordinary to relate after all. "I must tell you," said she, "that today is my birthday, and in honor of it, I have been entrusted with a pair of goloshes to introduce amongst mankind. These goloshes have the property of making everyone who puts them on imagine himself in any place he wishes, or that he exists at any period. Every wish is fulfilled at the moment it is expressed, so that for once, mankind have the chance of being happy." "No," replied Care. "You may depend upon it that whoever puts on those goloshes will be very unhappy, and bless the moment in which he can get rid of them." "What are you thinking of?" replied the other. Now see, I will place them by the door. Someone will take them instead of his own, and he will be the happy man. This was the end of their conversation. What happened to the counselor? It was late when Counselor Knapp, lost in thought about the times of King Hans, desired to return home. And fate so ordered it that he put on the goloshes of fortune instead of his own and walked out into the East Street. Through the magic power of the goloshes, he was at once carried back 300 years to the times of King Hans, for which he had been longing when he put them on. Therefore, he immediately set his foot into the mud and mire of the street, which in those days possessed no pavement. Why, this is horrible! How dreadfully dirty it is, said the counselor, and the whole pavement has vanished, and the lamps are all out. The moon had not yet risen high enough to penetrate the thick, foggy air, and all the objects around him were confused together in the darkness. At the nearest corner, a lamp hung before a picture of the Madonna, but the light it gave was almost useless, for he only perceived it when he came quite close, and his eyes fell on the painted figures of the mother and child. That is most likely a museum of art, thought he, and they have forgotten to take down the sign. Two men in the dress of olden times passed by him. What odd figures, thought he. They must be returning from some masquerade. Suddenly, he heard the sound of a drum and fifes, and then a blazing light from torches shone upon him. The counselor stared with astonishment as he beheld a most strange procession pass before him. First came a whole troop of drummers, beating their drums very cleverly. They were followed by lifeguards with longbows and crossbows. The principal person in the procession was a clerical-looking gentleman. The astonished counselor asked what it all meant and who the gentleman might be. That is the Bishop of Zealand. Good gracious, he exclaimed. What in the world has happened to the bishop? What can he be thinking about? Then he shook his head and said, It cannot possibly be the bishop himself. While musing on this strange affair, and without looking to the right or left, he walked on through East Street and over High Bridge Place. The bridge, which he supposed led to Palace Square, was nowhere to be found, but instead he saw a bank and some shallow water and two people who sat in a boat. Does the gentleman wish to be ferried over the holm? Asked one. To the holm, exclaimed the counselor, not knowing in what age he was now existing. I want to go to Christian's Haven in Little Turf Street. The men stared at him. Pray, tell me where the bridge is, said he. It is shameful that the lamps are not lighted here, and it is as muddy as if one were walking in a marsh." But the more he talked with the boatmen, the less they could understand each other. "I don't understand your outlandish talk," he cried at last, angrily, turning his back upon them. He could not, however, find the bridge, nor any railings. "What a scandalous condition this place is in," said he. Never certainly had he found his own times so miserable as on this evening. "I think it will be better for me to take a coach. But where are they?" There was not one to be seen. "I shall be obliged to go back to the King's New Market," said he, "where there are plenty of carriages standing, or I shall never reach Christian's Haven." Then he went towards East Street, and had nearly passed through it when the moon burst forth from a cloud. "Dear me, what have they been erecting here?" he cried, as he caught sight of the East Gate, which in olden times used to stand at the end of East Street. However, he found an opening through which he passed, and came out upon where he expected to find the New Market. Nothing was to be seen but an open meadow surrounded by a few bushes, through which ran a broad canal or stream. A few miserable-looking wooden booths for the accommodation of Dutch watermen stood on the opposite shore. "Either I behold a Fata Morgana, or I must be tipsy," groaned the counselor. "What can it be? What is the matter with me?" He turned back in the full conviction that he must be ill. In walking through the street this time, he examined the houses more closely. He found that most of them were built of lath and plaster, and many had only a thatched roof. "I am certainly all wrong," said he with a sigh, "and yet I only drank one glass of punch, but I cannot bear even that, and it was very foolish to give us punch and hot salmon. I shall speak about it to our hostess, the agent's lady. Suppose I were to go back now and say how ill I feel, I fear it would look so ridiculous, and it is not very likely that I should find anyone up." Then he looked for the house, but it was not in existence. "This is really frightful. I cannot even recognize East Street, not a shop to be seen. Nothing but old, wretched, tumble-down houses, just as if I were at Roskilde or Ringstedt. Oh, I really must be ill. It is no use to stand upon ceremony. But where in the world is the agent's house? There is a house, but it is not his. And people still up in it, I can hear. Oh dear, I certainly am very queer." As he reached the half-open door, he saw a light and went in. It was a tavern of the olden times, and seemed a kind of beer shop. The room had the appearance of a Dutch interior. A number of people consisting of seamen, Copenhagen citizens, and a few scholars sat in deep conversation over their mugs and took very little notice of the newcomer. "Pardon me," said the counselor, addressing the landlady. "I do not feel quite well, and I should be much obliged if you will send for a fly to take me to Christian's Haven." The woman stared at him and shook her head. Then she spoke to him in German. The counselor supposed from this that she did not understand Danish. He therefore repeated his request in German. This, as well as his singular dress, convinced the woman that he was a foreigner. She soon understood, however, that he did not find himself quite well, and therefore brought him a mug of water. It had something of the taste of sea-water, certainly, although it had been drawn from the well outside. Then the counselor leaned his head on his hand, drew a deep breath, and pondered over all the strange things that had happened to him. "Is that today's number of the day?" he asked quite mechanically as he saw the woman putting by a large piece of paper. She did not understand what he meant, but she handed him the sheet. It was a woodcut representing a meteor which had appeared in the town of Cologne. "That is very old," said the counselor, becoming quite cheerful at the sight of this antique drawing. "Where did you get this singular sheet? It is very interesting, although the whole affair is a fable. Meteors are easily explained in these days. They are northern lights which are often seen, and are no doubt caused by electricity." Those who sat near him and heard what he said looked at him in great astonishment, and one of them rose, took off his hat respectfully, and said in a very serious manner, "You must certainly be a very learned man, monsieur." "Oh no," replied the counselor. "I can only discourse on topics which everyone should understand. Modestia is a beautiful virtue," said the man. "Moreover, I must add to your speech, mihi secus videtur. Yet, in this case, I would suspend my judicium. May I ask to whom I have the pleasure of speaking?" "I am a bachelor of divinity," said the man. This answer satisfied the counselor. The title agreed with the dress. "This is surely," thought he, "an old village schoolmaster, a perfect original, such as one meets with sometimes even in Jutland. This is not certainly a locus docendi," began the man. "Still, I must beg you to continue the conversation. You must be well read in ancient lore." "Oh, yes," replied the counselor. "I am very fond of reading useful old books and modern ones as well, with the exception of everyday stories, of which we really have more than enough." "Everyday stories?" asked the bachelor. "Yes, I mean the new novels that we have at the present day." "Oh," replied the man with a smile, "and yet they are very witty and are much read at court. The king likes especially the romance of Messrs. Iffin and Gaudian, which describes King Arthur and his knights of the Round Table. He has joked about it with the gentlemen of his court." "Well, I have certainly not read that," replied the counselor. "I suppose it is quite new and published by Heiberg." "No," answered the man. "It is not by Heiberg. Gottfried von Gaiman brought it out." "Oh, is he the publisher? That is a very old name," said the counselor. "Was it not the name of the first publisher in Denmark? Yes, and he is our first printer and publisher now," replied the scholar. So far, all had passed off very well. But now, one of the citizens began to speak of a terrible pestilence which had been raging a few years before, meaning the plague of 1484. The counselor thought he referred to the cholera, and they could discuss this without finding out the mistake. The war in 1490 was spoken of as quite recent. The English pirates had taken some ships in the Channel in 1801, and the counselor, supposing they referred to these, agreed with them in finding fault with the English. The rest of the talk, however, was not so agreeable. Every moment, one contradicted the other. The good bachelor appeared very ignorant for the simplest remark of the counselor seemed to him either too bold or too fantastic. They stared at each other, and when it became worse, the bachelor spoke in Latin in the hope of being better understood. But it was all useless. "How are you now?" asked the landlady, pulling the counselor's sleeve. Then his recollection returned to him. In the course of conversation, he had forgotten all that had happened previously. "Goodness me, where am I?" said he. It bewildered him as he thought of it. "We will have some claret, or mead, or Bremen beer," said one of the guests. "Will you drink with us?" Two maids came in. One of them had a cap on her head of 2 colors. They poured out the wine, bowed their heads, and withdrew. The counselor felt a cold shiver run all over him. "What is this? What does it mean?" said he. But he was obliged to drink with them, for they overpowered the good man with their politeness, he became at last desperate. And when one of them said he was tipsy, he did not doubt the man's word in the least, only begged them to get a droshky. And then they thought he was speaking the Muscovite language. Never before had he been in such rough and vulgar company. One might believe that the country was going back to heathenism, he observed. This is the most terrible moment of my life. Just then, it came into his mind that he would stoop under the table and so creep to the door. He tried it, but before he reached the entry, the rest discovered what he was about and seized him by the feet, when luckily for him, off came the goloshes, and with them vanished the whole enchantment. The counselor now saw quite plainly a lamp and a large building behind it. Everything looked familiar and beautiful. He was in East Street, as it now appears. He lay with his legs turned towards a porch, and just by him sat the watchman asleep. Is it possible that I have been lying here in the street dreaming? Said he. Yes, this is East Street. How beautifully bright and gay it looks. It is quite shocking that one glass of punch should have upset me like this. 2 minutes afterwards, he sat in a droshky, which was to drive him to Christian's Haven. He thought of all the terror and anxiety which he had undergone, and felt thankful from his heart for the reality and comfort of modern times, which with all their errors were far better than those in which he so lately found himself. The Watchman's Adventures. Well, I declare there lies a pair of goloshes, said the watchman. No doubt they belong to the lieutenant who lives upstairs. They are lying just by his door. Gladly would the honest man have rung and given them in, for a light was still burning, but he did not wish to disturb the other people in the house, so he let them lie. These things must keep the feet very warm, said he. They are of such nice, soft leather. Then he tried them on, and they fitted his feet exactly. Now, said he, how droll things are in this world. There's that man can lie down in his warm bed, but he does not do so. There he goes, pacing up and down the room. He ought to be a happy man. He has neither wife nor children, and he goes out into company every evening. Oh, I wish I were he. Then I should be a happy man. As he uttered this wish, the goloshes which he had put on took effect, and the watchman at once became the lieutenant. There he stood in his room, holding a little piece of pink paper between his fingers, on which was a poem, a poem written by the lieutenant himself, who has not had for once in his life a moment of poetic inspiration. And at such a moment, if the thoughts are written down, they flow in poetry. The following verses were written on the pink paper. Oh, were I rich. Oh, were I rich. How oft in youth's bright hour, when youthful pleasures banish every care, I longed for riches, but to gain a power, the sword and plume and uniform to wear, the riches and the honor came for me. Yet still, my greatest wealth was poverty. Ah, help and pity me. Once in my youthful hours, when gay and free a maiden loved me, and her gentle kiss, rich in its tender love and purity, taught me, alas, too much of earthly bliss. Dear child, she only thought of youthful glee. She loved no wealth but fairy tales, and me. Thou knowest, ah, pity me. Oh, were I rich, again is all my prayer. That child is now a woman, fair and free, as good and beautiful as angels are. Oh, were I rich in lover's poetry, to tell my fairy tale, love's richest lore. But no, I must be silent. I am poor. Ah, wilt thou pity me? Oh, were I rich in truth and peace below. I need not then my poverty bewail. To thee I dedicate these lines of woe. Wilt thou not understand the mournful tale, a leaf on which my sorrows I relate? Dark story of a darker night of fate. Ah, bless and pity me.